Hi, welcome to Foreigner in the Philippines. We're going to deal with, I'm not offering a terrific amount of advice to one particular person, but we're going to call him Baradine, and because there are so many other of our friends or people that we know that have the same Christian name. So, he said, "Hi Terence, I wonder if you could provide me with information concerning bigamy laws in the Philippines. I have met a very nice Filipino lady on Match.com whom I wish to marry. I have been to Subic to meet with her and we are both in love with each other. She has been separated from her husband for 7 years. However, her annulment has not yet been processed. My question is, if I was to live with her in the Philippines, can I be in breach of the Philippine law concerning bigamy? My understanding is that this could potentially land me in prison for up to 12 years. Is this correct? I'm a British citizen, but I've lived in New Zealand most of my life. Unfortunately, I cannot at the moment sponsor her to live in New Zealand because I am currently unemployed. But as I took voluntary redundancy from my job." Anyway, he looked after his elderly father who has now passed, and he's finding it hard to get a job. But his idea was that if he has a house, if he were to rent that house, he could probably live on the rental money very well in the Philippines. So that was his plan. But he's a little bit worried because evidently he's been told that there are some pretty strict laws concerning bigamy. And they're a little bit strange to us Westerners because once a Westerner has filed legal separation, that is a condition, legal separation. It means the moment at which the two partners stopped being responsible for each other. Now, after, to my knowledge, after in say the UK or in America, if a person was to file a legal separation and have a legal separation granted, right? If you separate from your husband or wife and you say you win the lotto, you might, I mean nowadays it's completely insane. You can win $100 or $200 million. Now, if you do that and you're still married, you could find you've made a very expensive mistake. See, so what you should do once you separate from a woman certainly I think it's the same in the UK or America, the best thing to do is to get it legally acknowledged. Sign on the dotted line and get it stamped. You are now, even though you are still married, you're not legally taking responsibility from that point. Well, the other half cannot claim everything that you get after you have filed a legal separation. That was my understanding there. Now, as we all know, it's not possible to get a divorce at the moment, although they've been looking at new legislation. Whether it will happen or not, I don't know, because the Roman Catholic religion is so predominant in the Philippines that to get it by them probably would take quite a feat of legislation. So people are not exactly holding their breaths on that. So what could happen if this man moved in with this lady that he loves and she's been separated for 7 years? Well, there's several scenarios and they're mostly based on the bad news idea. And that is, if you went on to the Expat sites and you asked this question, you would get a load of bad news. Probably, in fairness, it would probably be based on fact. In fact, they may have and I'm only just guessing here, they may have a law about being a common law wife. So an expat would be careful about what he actually called his partner. That's why I remember we stayed with someone once in Cebu. He had a lovely girl living with him, but he introduced her as his helper, and it seemed to me that it was evident that he spent some quality time with that lady. And she confided in us when we were talking. She said, "I'm well aware of how slender my contact and grip is here in this house, and he could just tell me to leave any time without anything, like an employee." So back to our friend. If he comes over and he lives with this lady, now it's one of those things that if nobody complains, nothing will happen, and they will live quite happily. However, he is a foreigner, and given the conditioning in the mind of most Filipinos and Filipinas that every foreigner is rich, then it might be hard to shake that idea. So if you're looking at worst case scenario, if that husband finds out that she has met and is living with a foreigner, a rich foreigner, of course, even though we know in this case this man is not rich, if the unscrupulous husband found out, then he could come back and give them a hard time. I'm guessing that there is a law, I know that there is a law that states that you cannot do this. And I watched the enactment of this law on a movie that was supposed to be based on a true story. So what happened was that I think the man had an accident. He had an accident and he lost his memory. And when he came to, he didn't recognize his wife, so he couldn't live with her. So they didn't live together. They didn't go back together again because he couldn't. He couldn't, although he may have had feelings they couldn't be together. But she didn't give up, and neither did he completely, but he did have a girlfriend, and the girlfriend, in the end, the girlfriend won out. Well, everything was going great until it stopped going great, and then it wasn't going great, I can tell you. Because what happened was that the wife took them to court and took a case out against the man, I think. And he got time. I don't mean bedtime. I don't mean quality time either. He got put inside. And he served the sentence. I don't think it was quite the 12 years that our friend in this letter is talking about. But I think it was a year or 2 years. So, certainly, as far as Filipino prisons go, I think probably about 10 or 15 minutes is as much as you want to spend there. And that's just putting your head in and looking around. Not really being facetious, because I think that they are pretty rough. So you would want to avoid that by all means. So our friend, yes, there is a risk. How great is the risk is what you might want to look at. Okay? Now, if this husband, just looking at a few of the possibilities that would be here, if this husband, let's assume for a moment that the husband is not going to try to come back and blackmail you or get some money out of you in a settlement where he says, I won't bother you if you can just set me up in a sari-sari store or a bar. Okay? So he's not going to do that. What else? What else could happen? What else could you do? If you're really very, very much in love, what you could do is you could simply disappear from the face of the earth. Now, this man has said that he can't afford, due to his circumstances, he can't afford to go and sponsor his wife into New Zealand, because they have laws in New Zealand that say if you're going to sponsor somebody in, you better be able to take care of them. And by sponsoring them in, you have to be able to prove that you can pay the bills. So evidently he has acknowledged that he can't do that. So going to the New Zealand is another thing. But as he said, if he rents out his house, he can come back here to the Philippines and live reasonably well and together, at least, because they found love. Well, I wish you well and hope everything goes good. Let's hope that the husband doesn't come back. He talks about the annulment as if the annulment is going to come through. Did she file for an annulment? Because that's the alternative, and they're really talking about being able to do that. But in this case, it's not really very clear. So let's assume that there might be some documentation on the way home, but we're really not sure about it. So we have to assume that she is simply separated. Now, very often when people separate here, the man goes out and finds himself another family and is not interested in going any further on that marriage. In fact, we have that case with one of the houses that we built, and Beth named it the house of the unfaithful husband's family. And the husband had gone out, I had a very big day today. The husband has gone out, found himself a lady, and I think he's even got another family. This is a prolific man. So he's not likely to come back and start taking over that new house. That was a concern. So there's one that won't come back and haunt you. Now, you'll have to find out what happened with this man that she has been married to but has not seen, hopefully has not seen, for 7 years. And find out where he is. Is he in any kind of contact with this lady? Is he likely to show up at the door demanding this or that from the rich foreigner? These are questions that you can answer. Certainly I can't. In fact, can anybody? So that's what you've got to be aware of. Now, why don't you just disappear? If this is so difficult and you love her so much, and it's only for a limited number of years that you're going to have to live here, then disappear and go where you're not known, and then you're just another foreigner like me living with a young woman. I wish you well on this. Probably there are people who know a lot more about this from practical experience. All I know is I met my wife. She was totally unencumbered. She had not been married before, not even close. And what happened was they just wanted to see my divorce papers, which I got through, and we got married. And it was fairly straightforward. And has been straightforward since. We're up for 5 years very soon. So, where you will get your answers from, Mr. Baradine, is it Baradine? Where you'll get a lot of your answers will be in some quality comments. We're not really interested in all of that. Oh, well, it's another old foreigner trying to take advantage. We're not really interested in all of that. We want some sensible answers from this man. He's found a lady and he's in love with her, and she's in love with him, and the chances are that they'll be able to have a happy, rewarding relationship. So let's give them all the help that we can. And with some quality responses, comments, you will certainly be forearmed about what the risks are. Personally, I think as long as you are not living blatantly in an area that you were known to be married in, and who your ex husband or ex-husband to be at some point is living, having his face rubbed in it, especially if it was you that left him, as long as you're not doing that, probably no one will give a damn. So let's see what our subscribers come up with. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. It's an interesting question, and it's not unusual. This is a foreigner. Bye for now.